So now that that's dry, I'm just going to get a couple of colours, a bit of green and a bit of that purple shadow colour, and use a bit of dry brushwork technique to make the stones look a bit more weathered and a bit rougher. So starting with the cobalt blue and rose madder, got a hint of burnt sienna in it as well to make it slightly grey, and using the side of a number 8 brush, we'll just try this out. It's a little bit strong, the colour. I'm going to add more water to it. This needs to be fairly subtle at first. Just a bit of weathering really. Bit of green for that because there's quite a lot of lichen and moss on these stones, so a bit of that orioline and cobalt blue. I'm going to take a number 2 brush and get some quite thick Naples yellow, fairly strong. Naples yellow is opaque, and I'm going to use it against the dark areas to pick out 1 or 2 little bits of grass and straw, that sort of thing, just to sort of loosen it all up a bit. You can add a little bit of orioline, a bit of neat orioline to Naples yellow as well to make it slightly yellower. And it's just a few of these to sort of loosen it all up, especially around the bottom of stones as well. Keeping them nice and thin. And we'll go straight on now to putting a bit of colour onto the path itself. I've got some raw sienna and burnt sienna, quite a thin wash at first, and a number 8 brush, and we'll get a bit of colour over here in the distance, nice and light, bringing that right down, trying to put a sort of dip in the path with the angle of the brush, and then as that comes towards the foreground, I'm warming the colour up, some bit more raw sienna, a bit more burnt sienna in it to strengthen it up so that the colour is warmer at the very front of the scene. So we'll leave that to dry, and then it's just a case of putting in a few finishing touches. So I'm just going to mix a colour now for some shadow. Got a number 4 brush, and I've got cobalt blue, and I'm going back to the first colour in the sky, cobalt blue with a touch of rose madder, a nice warm shadow. This will work particularly well where you get that orangey brown background because they're contrasting colours. So I'm starting furthest away, reminding myself the light's coming from the right hand side, so we've got shadow down the bank and across this path. It really starts to breathe life into a painting, shadow. Describes the shapes as well. There's shadows from, there's lots of trees at the right hand side we can't even see, but they are casting shadows into the picture. I'm going to strengthen the shadow colour so it gets a little bit stronger nearer to the foreground. And I'm going to darken it slightly as well with a touch of burnt sienna. And we'll get some more. There's a fairly strong shadow across the path there and right up onto the stones. The stones themselves are casting shadows as well. There's shadow certainly behind the stones. This one here will cast a shadow onto the one behind it. And then the shadow from these branches coming right across. Bit bigger brush now, I've got a number 8 brush. And I'm just picking up some more shadow colour. And bringing that right across the front. A good strong shadow across the front of the picture really anchors the foreground down. And I'm going to soften it a little bit into the path with some clean water. And right across the front of the scene. Bit into these areas behind the stones here. And then there are trees casting shadows along the bank. These trees that I put in earlier on, they will be casting shadows across the scene there. A little touch of green on the brush, some Oriolan and cobalt blue. To put a little bit of shape into the background there. I've got a few pencil marks indicating it, just where the ground is a little bit more uneven, a little bit rougher. And I'm softening that in one or two places. And then with a very small brush, number 2, I've got some burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, that rich dark brown, just to pick out one or two little stones, bits of gravel, stuff like that, right at the edge of the path here. Just giving it a little bit more shape in parts. Shadow behind that stone's more intense, I think. Where in one or two areas where I may have missed a bit, I can turn that into a little bit of stone or gravel, something like that, by putting a bit of shadow underneath it. And I think the final touch with a bit of shadow colour and the number 2 brush is just to put a few perspective lines leading your eye along the path and into the scene. So we'll call that finished. So you can see from looking at the photograph that I haven't put every stone in by any means, but that's an important point. When you're working from your photograph, do take care to simplify. Just because it's there doesn't mean you have to put it in. Your sketch is also very useful for helping with the simplification process. Note also how I've used the rough paper to create texture in the scene, both in the grass and on the path and on the stones themselves. And finally, you can see that I did the sketch and took the photographs on a fairly dull day, but I've used artistic license to put a bit of brightness into it. You're the artist, you can always do that.
Now available on DVD. Try these techniques yourself at home whenever you wish. Today's workshop is now available to order on DVD from the Painting and Drawing channel. For further information and to order your copy, go to www.paintingdrawingchannel.com.